life, I promise to reach out more, as was just said. Make a bigger effort to stay in touch with friends and families, and appreciate the little gifts in life, project optimism as he did, lessen my dependence on social media, which he didn't keep up with very well, and be willing to strike up a conversation with anyone, anywhere. People love it when another person takes interest in them, and Nils did this with each of you. We're going to open the mic, and just a final Nils story. People have mentioned that when he watched, he loved the holidays, and he watched It's a Wonderful Life, and that when we came into his apartment, I think Ruth turned on a DVD, and It's a Wonderful Life was queued up, and this is early November. He was ready to watch it probably 100 times. The story, as you may know, is about a man who learns the significance of his life and his positive impact on others through love, after an angel shows him what life would have been like had he not been born. And I know why Nils loved this story. It reminded him and reminds us of the positive impact he had on each of our lives. I, for one, am so grateful that he was born.
Daddy.
As life is
Daddy.
so much better having known him. Luann, if you'd like to come up and say something, and then anybody else who has.
My name is Constantine. Just wanted to let you know that I was one of the umpires, one of the many umpires that Nils mentored over the years here in the city. And even after he stopped umpiring, he would come support us all, talk to us at Moscone, and it meant a lot to us. I just want to say thank you, Nils, for everything, and always being there for all the umpires. And every game that we umpire, we'll always be thinking about you when we step on that field. So thank you, Nils.
I'm Frank DeRose. I'm going to represent the baseball players now that the baseball umpires have been represented. So Nils, umpired our games. We number of go out to Golden Gate Park, drive by Big Rec. Nils was there every weekend, basically. He umpired the adult leagues. He umpired the high school leagues. My son, all his friends, they all knew Nils because he umpired their games too at Big Rec, at Moscone, all the other fields. We would get up there and play, and everybody's talked about how gregarious Nils was. So we play, like I get up there, of course, take myself very seriously, getting up there to play, and Nils would be talking away, and I'm like, Nils, I'm trying to concentrate here at the plate, but that didn't stop Nils. One guy, one of our teammates, Rob Noble, I think you guys know him. So Nils made this one call. Rob Noble said, Nils, that was the worst call you ever made. And Nils, not skipping a beat, said, Rob, you've seen me make worse calls than that. So he didn't take himself seriously, thank God. We took ourselves too seriously. No, we all had a good time. And a lot of the players still playing at Big Rec. Keith runs a weekend game every weekend. Sunday mornings, there are games, and AA has been mentioned a few times. Turns out Sunday mornings AA meets in the bleachers right behind the backstop, and that's we go out and play, and long ago, our wives, our kids, they've stopped coming to see us play. Nobody comes to watch us play, right? I mean, we're just a bunch of misfits at this point. So there's, 100 people on Sunday morning sitting in the bleachers while we're playing, and we always joke like that's the biggest attendance we ever get. So we'll remember that. We'll remember Nils when we're playing there and umpiring there at Big Rec on Sunday mornings. Thanks.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Good afternoon. My name is Paul Coney. So we've heard from Constantine for the umpire. We've heard now from players. Now you're going to hear from coaches. I first met Nils in the 90s when I started as a young coach. And it wasn't long thereafter that we talked about his tribes. There was a bond between him and I, and that was my father. My father was very instrumental in Nils's recovery. Excuse me. He would tell me time and time again that if not for my dad, he wouldn't be where he was. Then we also talk about him donating his body. At my dad's memorial, he came up to me and told me that he's donating his body because that's what my dad did. And he wanted to do the same thing. So me and Nils have a lot in common. Between baseball, talking about recovery I would hear it through my dad, I would hear it through him, and a common bond. And you say he'd greet everybody and would be happy to tell them their way around the city. My father was the same way. San Francisco native, would help anybody out. And I guarantee my dad greeted him at the pearly gates to give him the tour.
I went to a baseball game once with Nils. No, it was a wonderful game, but he took out his, what are those called, the rosters?
Scorecard.
Yeah, the scorecards, and he started doing this and doing that, doing this and doing that. And I took my book out of my knapsack and started reading it. And I will never forget the look on Nils' face. He was absolutely horrified. So we've all spoken, you have all spoken so beautifully of his kindness, but I remember the very first time I met Nils. He was an accountant at Transamerica. And I was an employee at Transamerica, and I had recently submitted my expense account for a trip to New York. I've never met Nils, but I get this phone call. Hello, is this Cleo Protopappas? That's me. Yes. He said, I would like you to come down to the accounting office right now, please. I hung up my phone and I thought, wow. I got down there and Nils, when Nils saw me, he turned my expense account report around and looked at me and he said, is this yours? I said, yes. He said, I notice a lot of entries on this account for trail mix. And there are no receipts. And the trail mix, was like $3.95, $2.95. I was a girl from Bakersfield working at a big corporation in New York. Honestly, I was kind of intimidated by the restaurants. So I just bought trail mix on the street and went back to my apartment and ate that with orange juice and soup, whatever was there. And that's how Nils and I got to be friends. there are a lot of stories, but the one that I'm gonna tell is the one that I just remembered listening to your stories about Mount Whitney. I was working at Transamerica and wanted to climb Mount Shasta. And I, called REI, wanted to rent crampons, and I was gonna do it alone because nobody else I knew wanted to climb Mount Shasta. Somehow Nils heard that I wanted to do this, and he showed up at my desk and he said, "I'll go with you." So we planned this trip together, and Nils shows up in his work boots. You know what work boots are? I mean, the things you climb trees with or fix roofs with. And we started the ascent to Mount Shasta, and we had to go up to a level and sleep under a tent. And oh my God, that night it was just blizzarding and the wind was blowing. And we got up the next morning, started up the hill, and I got to a point where I think it was called Red Bluff. And I looked a little bit over the edge and I saw something like blue ice. I guess that's what's at the top of a mountain. And I said, "Nils, I cannot do this." So I ran down the hill and Nils said he was gonna go to the top. I waited and I waited. And finally, Nils comes down the hill and he apparently had gone up to the top, but you know how you get sort of dizzy? And he was wandering around the top of Mount Shasta. And somebody was, kind of like not really there, and somebody found him and brought him half down the hill where he came back to his senses and was able to meet with me at our campsite. So I've had a lot of experiences with Nils, loved all of them, and really the thing I'm gonna miss most is just our monthly, sometimes bi-monthly, or every 2 months lunches. I really, really am gonna miss all the different places he and I went together. Sometimes we took my dog to the beach, sometimes we took my dog to the dog park, but we always ended up eating afterwards at really special places. And I found out about Nils when I was in Egypt. And a text went in front of me, and I looked at it, and honest to God, I thought it was Nils joking. I really did. I thought, how could he do this? And then I realized what had happened. So everybody says RIP. Every time I have lunch in San Francisco, Nils, I promise to think of you.
Hi, my name is Emily Stoplasa. I met Nils in the early 1980s when he hired me to work with him at Sunrise Video in Marysville, California. We realized early on that we have the same crazy sense of humor, and for the most part, we enjoyed the same movies. Here are a few of the memories I have of inappropriate cards from Nils. He sent me a Christmas card. As you can tell, my heritage is Mexican descent. He sent me a card of Santa dressed in Mexican garb. And you open it up and it says, "M, shake your maracas." He sent me an Easter card of Jesus smoking a cigarette. And it's captioned, "Jesus wants to remind you that if you don't sin, he died for nothing." Shame on Nils, shame on him. Things I remember about Nils: baseball. He chewed his coffee. He eats every bit of an apple, including the core. His Cuban cigars, baseball, the Three Stooges, his immaculate fingernails, jokes at the most inappropriate time. One of his friends shared a very inappropriate joke with me. He told Nils. He had the most joyful laughter. Our trip to Hawaii. The picture you see over there, the whales, was on our trip. And We were on a whale watching boat, and Nils, we were on a whale watching boat. There was a Japanese couple who was constantly taking pictures. They didn't speak a word of English, but my daughter's mother-in-law somehow communicated, let's share emails. So they sent my daughter's mother-in-law those pictures. I copied them, sent them to Nils, so I'm so excited to see those up there. Okay, travel, and with that, sending postcards from all his travels.
Yeah.
I don't know how many postcards I have. I'm sure a lot of you have the same amount of postcards. What a joy to always receive those. He treated my daughters like the favorite uncle. He just really, really enjoyed my daughters. I have a picture of him pushing a stroller of my granddaughter while we were in Hawaii. He actually took me on a helicopter trip. That was his gift to me when we went to Hawaii. It was because of my birthday, and I had just gone into remission from cancer, so that was our trip, and so he gifted me with this trip on a helicopter ride. It was quite the beautiful trip. Nils showed up at the hospital the day I had the surgery to remove the cancer. And I had a birthday card there for him, because I had my surgery on October 4th. Of course, his birthday is October 9th. He was so touched, he laughed until he cried. That's a great memory for me, watching that man cry, who gave so much laughter. Nils continued to cultivate our friendship all these years, and I will miss his presence in my life.
Gosh, I think I met Nils about 15, 20 years ago when I went to a party Luann and Rich Hansen had at Harris's restaurant. And I kept looking at him, I'm like, who's this guy with a hat and a shirt? And then I would see him at meetings, and we started to connect, and Tuesday nights we would go to the surf meeting in the Sunset. I would pick him up. He's like, you're gonna be here, right? You know where to go, you know where to stop. And then I also worked at Marina Safeway, and Nils would come, he goes, Rita, Rita. Then he came in my line, and he had a list of what he bought and how much it would cost. Yeah. And the milk, and there were eggs that didn't come out right, and he's like, okay, this is not the right price. And he would not quit until, of course I adjusted it, and it was right, but he had all the documentation. He goes, I'm on a budget, and this is all I can buy. And we would go to lunch together at the that barn something, the salad. And he would take me out, then I would take him out another week. And I swear to God, we had just ordered the salad and sat down. I'm like, how did you eat that so fast? I mean, I'm still working on my salad, and we would talk the entire time about baseball. And my heart, because I love baseball and I love going to see the Giants, and he was just so happy to talk about the trips, just to be able to go to game with friends. And then his talks about riding his bike to the Y. I mean, he had a schedule he was going to keep, And I just love him so much. It was so nice just to have these moments of just having lunches together, connecting, and just listening. Friendship, I think, is a lot about listening and just suiting up and showing up. So my condolences to the family. Just a wonderful, wonderful man with so many memories. Thank you.
I wasn't going to do this, but there's one story that I really have to tell. I'm Bill McClave, and I met Nils in Transamerica in the 80s with Randy, and we stayed in touch ever since. And the last time I saw him was on a beautiful late summer day in the Oakland Coliseum in section 323. I think Scott might have been with us too that day. It was a terrific game, and we must have done that dozens and dozens of times. It was just, Nils just loved it. He said to me once, the two best numbers ever invented, or distances maybe, in the history of the world were 90 feet and 60 feet 6 inches, which is the distance between the bases and the distance between the pitcher's mound and home plate. We also spent a lot of happy times having lunch at the Balboa Cafe in the city. We'd meet. I even met him a few times out in the bleachers at Funston Park or Moscone Park. with his midriff bare to the sun. And he had a very, very tan front and very pale. But one story I want to tell that he told me, because everyone talked about how garrulous and friendly and talkative Nils was. He told me the story. He was walking, I think it was Market Street, San Francisco, and he sees two guys walking toward him, and he realizes that one of them is Nils Lofgren. And he said, "Oh, gosh, I had to say something." And he walks up to Nils and Lofgren and says, "Nils Lofgren." And the guy looked at him, he says, "Nils Nilsson." And he said, "I hardly ever made anybody named Nils." And he said it was they had a really nice conversation, and Nils Lofgren couldn't have been nicer. And then at one point, Nils Lofgren said, "Oh, by the way, I'd like you to meet my friend Richard Starkey." And Nils said, he looked at Richard Starkey, and he mumbled something, and he walked away. He said, "I think it's the only time Nils has ever been at a loss for words. He had no idea what to say, but he loved to tell the story on himself." The last time I spoke to Nils, actually, I happened to be in Paris, and he was in Helsinki, in the hospital, and our mutual friend Cleo told me what was going on, and I called him, and he was pretty distraught, mostly because he'd been told he was going to have to be there for 6 weeks. They had him on a very strong antibiotic, and we talked, and then I called him a couple days later, and his spirits were much better. The hospital in Helsinki had worked out an arrangement with UCSF. They put him on time-release antibiotics to get him across the ocean, and it was going to be a tough flight, Helsinki to Reykjavik to Portland, Oregon to San Francisco, which kind of worried me, but I'm so glad that he made it back to San Francisco, because he said, "I just want to get back to my own city." He said, "I'm never leaving the country again." He said, "My next trip is going to be to Arizona." And I'm so glad he made it to his own city, and I'm so sad that he left us. But I was thinking spring training starts in a few weeks, and I just have to believe that one way or another, Nils is going to be there. So rest in peace.
My name is Bob Martindale, and 25 years ago, I played in the Bay Area men's senior baseball league for a team called the Firebirds. We called it the Bouncers back then. And to the players here, take yourself back 20, 25 years ago, how we loved baseball. It was everything to us. We lived for Sundays. We were in our adult prime. And Nils was right there in the middle of it, watching us play, seeing how we loved baseball. He loved baseball too. How do we know that? Because he became an umpire. The most hated job on the field. But Nils was probably the most respected, the most well-liked umpire. 25 years after I've been playing, I still remember him. And every now and then, I think about the people I played with, and Nils, and whatever happened to him. And I always remember him saying, "Bobby, how you doing, Bobby?" You know, he was just so friendly. And even when he called you out on strikes, which he did a few times to me, I'd look at him, and he goes, "It was close, Bobby. You should have swung." Yeah. One time I walked back to the dugout, and one of our guys started yapping at Nils, and Nils shot back, "Wait till you get up here, Joe." And after 25 years, it's funny what you remember. I remember a game where the bases were loaded. We were playing the Giants, playing shortstop on the grass. Somebody hit a line drive at me. I went up to catch it, but I put my glove in front of my eyes, and I never saw it. And Before I could freak out, the ball hit me in my glove, fell to the ground. I picked it up, threw it to home plate to get the runner. Nils called him out. The manager of the Giants, a guy named Mark Seaman, went total George Brett on Nils. He lost his mind. He can't do that. He can't do that. And Nils stepped out from behind the plate and says, well, if he did that on purpose, he certainly fooled me, runners out. I pleaded my case to Mark, but to no good. He was upset with me. I was just glad I didn't hit my face and lose my teeth. But it's just funny how you remember these things and how kind he was, and everybody knew him. He was the most respected umpire of my era. You did good, Nils. You did really good. And I will see you again one day. Maybe you'll get to umpire. Maybe everything will be working on us correctly. Until then, you sleep well. See you one day.
Thank you, everyone. Lovely comments and stories. I would like to invite people to stick around, have some of our excess coffee, cookies, and cake, please. Eric's going to bring us home, but I'm going to just read a very short poem. There is a time in life when you expect the world to be always full of new things. And then comes a day when you realize that it is not how it will be at all. You see that life will become a thing made of holes, absences, losses. Things that were there are no longer. And you realize too that you have to grow around and between the gaps. Though you can put your hand out to where things were and feel that tense, shining dullness of space where the memories are. Helen McDonald, thank you very much. Yeah.
All right, folks, we're going to bring this to a close. The pictures that are laying out in the memorabilia, if you all would like to take some of that with you, you're welcome to it. If there's a picture that brings to you, except for the whale picture that's already spoken for. Okay? And so we spoke about Nilsson's favorite movie, and I'd like to close with this. Look, Daddy, a teacher says an angel has just earned his wings. Thank you all for coming.